All right, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture a deeply relatable scenario. Think back to a time when you first developed a crush on someone. Before that attraction really kicked in, your interactions were probably completely normal, right? A simple hello was just a greeting. A message was just, well, an exchange of info. But the absolute second that seduction, that desire entered the picture, everything changed. Suddenly, you found yourself navigating this intoxicating, kind of exhausting cycle of romantic ambiguity. You were completely hooked. But why? Why on earth does the human mind become so utterly captivated by what it doesn't know? Well, throughout this explainer, we're going to unpack the exact psychological architecture of ambiguity. And trust me, understanding this is going to completely change how you view your own romantic pursuits. Take a look at this quote. Love does not begin in certainty. It begins in ambiguity. There's a really fascinating truth to this. The moment seduction actually enters your life, ordinary reality just shatters. Suddenly, the whole world becomes psychologically charged. Every small gesture, every quick look, every little pause in a conversation, it doesn't just mean one thing anymore. It suddenly carries like 12,000 possibilities. The person you're attracted to exists as a total enigma, and your brain just goes into absolute overdrive trying to solve them.
Because of this shattered reality, you literally stop seeing things at face value. Instead, you start hunting for hidden subtext in the smallest, most insignificant actions. Say they cough during a silent moment, you're suddenly wondering if they're nervous around you. What if a hand briefly brushes yours? You immediately ask yourself, wait, was that an accident or was that a deliberate symbolic touch? How about a last-minute invite? Does it mean they couldn't stop thinking about you, or are you just a total afterthought? And then there's the ultimate modern mystery, the delayed text. A delayed reply suddenly feels profoundly meaningful. Literally nothing remains neutral anymore.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that this transformation forces you into a completely new state of being. Welcome to your new identity as a romantic paranoiac. You literally become a relentless hunter for clues in those early stages of attraction. Your mind gets hypervigilant, highly interpretive, and honestly, kind of obsessive. You find yourself caught in this wildly unstable middle ground. You're constantly getting these varied doses of encouragement and then withdrawal. And because certainty is entirely withheld from you, a single central question begins to silently govern your entire mind.
Do they actually desire me? Do they like me? Your internal monologue just starts racing. Every single interaction becomes a puzzle piece that you are frantically trying to fit together.
And the tension just keeps escalating. Will they text back? You're agonizingly oscillating back and forth between hope and despair. A simple smile from them produces this immense surge of hope. But then a missed call or a sudden bit of emotional distance, boom, you are thrown right back into absolute despair and total confusion.
Was that intentional? You are completely trapped. Your own mind is forcing you to endlessly overanalyze messages, replay brief interactions over and over, and meticulously rehearse conversations in the bathroom mirror. You are emotionally fixated. But here's the crazy part. It's not because you know how they feel, but precisely because you don't. The unknown has become completely intoxicating.
Section 1. The Pleasure Trap, and Why the Unknown Hooks Us. Okay, let's take a breath and slow down for a second. We know that unpredictability feels deeply addictive, but to truly get why we get stuck in this loop, we need to look at the actual psychological mechanics of what pleasure is. Why does this wildly unpredictable chase feel so incredibly good?
Well, most of us naturally assume pleasure comes directly from the object we desire, right? The person, the kiss, the validation. But psychologically speaking, pleasure often arises not from the object itself, but from the relief of tension surrounding it. Just imagine you're frantically searching for your lost keys right before you have to leave home. Anxiety builds, pressure accumulates. Every passing second just intensifies your frustration. Then, out of nowhere, someone hands you the keys. Boom. Massive relief floods your body. In that specific moment, those keys feel almost magical. But a few hours later, those exact same keys lying quietly on a table produce absolutely zero joy. The pleasure didn't originate from the keys themselves. It actually emerged from the sudden release of that accumulated psychological pressure.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute core of our romantic obsession. Think about the comparison here. Finding your lost keys gives you the relief of accumulated anxiety, right? Well, receiving a delayed text gives you the relief of emotional uncertainty. Seduction operates through the exact same mechanism as those lost keys. The uncertainty of will they text back generates this massive internal pressure. When that positive signal finally arrives, your phone buzzes and oh my gosh, it's them.
That accumulated pressure instantly dissolves into relief, excitement, and pleasure. But here is the massive catch. Your brain misattributes that huge psychological relief to the person themselves. You think they are the source of your profound joy, when in reality, a huge portion of that intensity is just the relief of your own tension finally dissolving.
Moving on to Section 2, the addiction of the chase and the escalation of desire. Now, there's a darker dimension to this mechanism. The relief of tension is incredibly powerful for sure, but it comes with a major flaw. Because it's fundamentally based on resolving anxiety, the mind inevitably starts seeking stronger and stronger stimulation once that original emotional high wears off. Let's look at how this hunger actually grows.
We can clearly map out this relentless escalation of desire. Think about it. In the very first minutes, a single text excites us deeply. But later, texting isn't enough. Days pass and we start craving phone calls. Months go by and we're seeking physical closeness, then exclusivity. Years down the line, we might even find ourselves needing constant reassurance. Why on earth does this happen? It's because pleasure generated through relief never fully satisfies the mind permanently. Your mind just continuously escalates its demands, falsely believing that the very next level of connection is going to finally provide permanent satisfaction. But as we know, no finite experience can permanently satisfy an infinite psychological appetite.
Which brings us to a pretty harsh reality. The psychology of seduction closely resembles actual addiction. It's a rhythm: hope, despair, relief, longing. And then the cycle just repeats. Your brain is essentially being actively manipulated by intermittent reward. This is exactly why a person who is completely, consistently available often feels emotionally boring to us. Crazy, right? The most psychologically addictive person is usually the one who alternates unpredictably between emotional warmth and distance. The turbulence itself is what sustains your psychological fixation.
And that brings us to a very painful paradox in Section 3, the illusion of love and why predictability kills the spark. This is something almost everyone has asked themselves or their friends at some point. Why do so many relationships lose their initial, intense spark once they finally become stable and committed?
Let's contrast these two states for a second. Seduction feeds entirely on uncertainty, ambiguity, and mystery. Partnership, on the other hand, depends on predictability, stability, and certainty. The very predictability required to build a healthy, long-term love literally removes the exact ambiguity that fueled your initial excitement. Those 12,000 possibilities we talked about earlier, they collapse into one known reality. A smile no longer demands frantic interpretation. A text no longer carries unbearable suspense. The romantic paranoiac, that hunter for clues, suddenly has absolutely nothing left to hunt. So naturally, the tension cools down.
So, let's break down the exact step-by-step mechanism of how your brain was successfully hijacked by this architecture. It's what we call the seduction trap. Step 1. Ambiguity creates emotional pressure. Step 2. That pressure is finally resolved, creating sudden relief. Step 3. Your brain interprets that massive relief as profound pleasure. And finally, Step 4. That intense pleasure creates a deep emotional attachment. Which leads us to the ultimate danger of this whole cycle, the grand illusion. We constantly mistake the anxiety of emotional turbulence for the intensity of true romantic love. The human mind, which is just so addicted to emotional stimulation, confuses the frantic chase for genuine passion. And if this cycle is never clearly understood, what begins as a beautiful enchantment can slowly, almost silently, become a psychological imprisonment. You'll find yourself endlessly searching for the next romantic high, the next thrill, maybe even discarding totally stable partners because you mistake their peacefulness for a lack of love.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a profound question to chew on. The real question isn't just how do we sustain attraction in a relationship? The much deeper issue is this: why does the human mind become so captivated by uncertainty in the first place? I challenge you to look inward. Try to deeply understand your own mind's cravings for pressure and relief. Because honestly, until we understand that exact mechanism within ourselves, we risk spending our entire lives mistaking endless craving for aliveness and emotional turbulence for true love. Just keep that in mind the absolute next time you find yourself staring at a delayed text message.